If you believe that respect and kindness should always come first, you're going to love this story. Make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more incredible moments where justice is served and good people are celebrated. Now, let an X 2019 S dive into what happened on this unforgettable day on Family Feud. There was a time when treating others with dignity and respect was considered the foundation of being a good person. But what happened on Family Feud in September 2024 would remind everyone why those values still matter more than anything else. When 38-year-old contestant Brad Mitchell decided to mock an immigrant family and X 2019's accent during a live taping, he thought he was being funny. He thought the audience would laugh along with him. He had no idea that Steve Harvey was about to do something that would restore millions of people and X 2019's faith in standing up for what is right. In less than 5 minutes, Brad Mitchell would go from contestant to cautionary tale, and the Nguyen family from California would become heroes without saying a single word in their own defense. Steve Harvey had seen disrespect before, but what he witnessed that Tuesday afternoon crossed a line that he could not ignore. When he made the decision that would shock the studio and eventually millions of viewers around the world, he proved that some things are more important than ratings, more important than entertainment, and more important than keeping everyone comfortable. He proved that defending human dignity is never the wrong choice. ACT 2. Character setup: the Nguyen family had traveled all the way from Orange County, California, to Los Angeles for their chance to compete on Family Feud. For 52-year-old Min Nguyen and his wife Lan, 49, this was more than just an opportunity to win money on a game show. It was a symbol of everything they had achieved since coming to America from Vietnam 30 years ago with nothing but hope and determination. Min and Lan had arrived in the United States in 1994 as refugees, part of the wave of Vietnamese immigrants seeking a better life after years of hardship following the war. They spoke almost no English when they arrived, carrying their infant daughter and 2 small suitcases containing everything they owned. They had settled in Orange County, where a small Vietnamese community had welcomed them and helped them find their footing in this new and overwhelming country. For 3 decades, Min had worked 6 days a week at the family restaurant he had managed to open after years of saving every penny from his job at a factory. Lan had worked alongside him every single day, managing the kitchen and creating authentic Vietnamese dishes that reminded their customers of home. Their 3 children, now adults, had all graduated from college. Their oldest daughter was a doctor, their son was an engineer, and their youngest was finishing law school. The Nguyen family was living proof of the American dream, proof that hard work, sacrifice, and perseverance could transform a refugee family into pillars of their community. Standing with them on the Family Feud stage were their children and Min and X 2019's younger brother, who had also come to America years after Min and Lan had established themselves. All of them spoke English fluently, though Min and Lan still carried the distinct accent of their native Vietnamese. It was an accent shaped by a different language, a different culture, and a lifetime of resilience. To their family and their community, that accent represented strength and survival. To Brad Mitchell, it would become the target of his cruelty. Brad Mitchell was 38 years old from a small town in Montana. He had come to Family Feud with his own family team, which included his wife, his brother, and 2 cousins. Brad was loud, confident, and had a habit of trying to make himself the center of attention. During the pre-show interviews and warm-up, he had already made several jokes at the expense of other contestants, comments that the producers had let slide as nervous energy and pre-game banter. What the producers did not realize yet was that Brad and X 2019's sense of humor had a cruel edge to it. He was the type of person who thought that making fun of others made him funny, that mockery was the same as wit. He had grown up in a place where difference was often met with suspicion rather than curiosity, where people who looked different or spoke differently were viewed as outsiders rather than neighbors. He had never been challenged on his behavior, never been told that his jokes were not harmless, and never learned that words could hurt just as much as actions. The game began normally enough. The 2 families faced off at the main podium, answering questions and earning points. The Nguyen family was doing well, their answers thoughtful and their teamwork evident. Min, as the family captain, answered questions with careful consideration, his English clear despite his accent. Each time he spoke, his family members smiled with pride, knowing how far he had come from the young refugee who had once struggled to order food at a restaurant because he could not pronounce the words correctly. Steve Harvey, as always, was engaging with both families warmly, making jokes and creating the comfortable atmosphere that made Family Feud so beloved. He had a particular respect for the Nguyen family, having learned during the pre-show interview about their journey from Vietnam and the success they had built through sheer determination. He had told the producers that their story was exactly the kind of American story that deserved to be celebrated. Everything changed during the third round of the game. ACT3, the struggle. The question had been asked, and Nguyen had given his answer. It was a good answer, one that appeared on the board and earned his family points. As the board revealed the answer and the audience applauded, Nguyen smiled and turned back to his family, saying something to them in Vietnamese that made them laugh. It was a brief moment of joy, a family sharing a private joke in their native language. That is when Brad Mitchell made his move. Standing at his own podium, waiting for his turn, Brad decided to imitate Nguyen and X 2019's accent. He turned to his family members, and in an exaggerated, mocking tone, said something that was meant to sound like Vietnamese, but was really just gibberish delivered in a deliberately offensive way. He made his voice high-pitched and added random sounds that bore no resemblance to any actual language. Then he laughed, and his family members, perhaps out of nervousness or perhaps because they shared his sense of humor, laughed with him. The studio audience fell silent. The laughter died in the throats of those who had initially thought Brad was just making a joke. The Nguyen family, standing at their podium, heard what Brad had done. Nguyen and X 2019's smile faded from his face. His wife Lan looked down at the floor, her shoulders tensing. Their children and X 2019's expressions hardened, anger and hurt flashing across their faces. Steve Harvey had been reviewing his note card for the next question when he heard Brad and X 2019's mock accent. His head snapped up, and he turned to look at Brad with an expression that made everyone in the studio hold their breath. Steve and X 2019's jaw was tight, his eyes were focused, and the easy smile that usually played on his face had completely disappeared. And X201C, hold on, and X201D, Steve said, his voice cutting through the nervous silence. And X201C, hold on just a minute. And X201D, he walked away from his podium and moved toward Brad and X 2019's family. Brad, still grinning, seemed to think that Steve was coming over to make a joke with him, to join in on what Brad apparently thought was harmless fun. He had no idea that he was about to receive one of the most public corrections of his life. And X201C, what did you just do? And X201D, Steve asked Brad, his voice calm but carrying an unmistakable edge. Brad and X 2019's smile faltered. And X201C, what do you mean? And X201D, he asked, though the nervousness in his voice suggested he knew exactly what Steve meant. And X201C, I mean that sound you just made. And X201D, Steve said, his eyes locked on Brad and X 2019's. And X201C, that thing you just did with your voice. Were you mocking the way Mr. Nguyen speaks? And X201D, the color drained from Brad and X 2019's face. He looked around as if hoping someone would rescue him from this moment, but his family members had gone silent, and the audience was watching with rapt attention. And X201C, I mean it was just a joke, man. I did not mean anything by it. And X201D, Steve took a step closer to Brad. His voice remained calm, but there was steel in his words. And X201C, a joke? Let me ask you something, Brad. How many languages do you speak? And X201D, Brad blinked, caught off guard by the question. And X201C, just English. And X201D, Steve nodded slowly. And X201C, just English. Okay, now let me tell you something about Mr. Nguyen over there. He speaks Vietnamese, which he learned growing up in Vietnam. And he speaks English, which he learned when he came to this country 30 years ago as a refugee with nothing. He learned it as an adult, which if you know anything about language, you know is one of the hardest things a person can do. He learned it while working full-time, while raising a family, while building a business from scratch. And now he speaks 2 languages, which is 2 more than you apparently speak perfectly. And X201D, the audience erupted in applause, a wave of support for the point Steve was making. Brad looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. But Steve was not finished. He turned to address the entire studio, his voice rising with passion. And X201C, ladies and gentlemen, I want to talk about respect for a minute. When someone comes to this country from another place, when they learn a new language and build a new life, when they work hard and raise their children and contribute to their communities, they deserve our respect. They do not deserve to be mocked. They do not deserve to be made fun of because they have an accent when they speak the language they learned to survive and thrive in a country that was not the one they were born in. And X201D, the applause grew louder. Steve turned back to Brad, who was now looking down at his feet, his face red with shame. And X201C, an accent is not something to be ashamed of. An accent is a badge of honor. It means you are brave enough to live in a place where everything is different from what you knew. It means you learned to communicate in a way that was not natural to you. Mr. Nguyen and X 2019's accent tells me that he is a man who has overcome more challenges than most of us will ever face. And you, Brad, you thought it was funny to mock that. And X201D. Steve paused, letting the weight of his words settle over the studio. And X201C, here is what is going to happen. I am going to give you a choice. You can apologize to the Nguyen family right here, right now with sincerity and respect. Or you can leave this stage and forfeit the game. Those are your options, and X201D. Brad looked up at Steve, his eyes wide with shock. And X201C, you are kicking me off the show, and X201D. And X201C, I am giving you a choice, and X201D. Steve corrected. And X201C, but if you cannot treat people with basic human decency and respect, then yes, you do not belong on this stage. Family Feud is about families, about joy, about bringing people together. It is not a platform for bigotry or disrespect. So what is it going to be? And X201D. Brad looked over at the Nguyen family. Min stood with quiet dignity, his arm around his wife. His children flanked them on either side, all of them watching and waiting. Brad opened his mouth to speak, but whatever words he was searching for would not come. He looked at his own family members, but they offered him no support. His wife had tears in her eyes, whether from embarrassment or disappointment, it was hard to tell. Finally, Brad turned back to Steve and mumbled, and X201C, I am sorry. I did not mean to offend anyone, and X201D, Steve shook his head. And X201C, that is not good enough. You are not apologizing to me. You are apologizing to them. And I need you to mean it or this is over, and X201D. Brad swallowed hard and turned to face the Nguyen family. He walked slowly across the stage until he was standing directly in front of Min. And X201C, Mr. Nguyen, and X201D, he said, his voice shaking, and X201C, I am truly sorry for what I did. It was disrespectful, it was wrong, and you and your family did not deserve that. I apologize, and X201D, Min looked at Brad for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his words were measured and dignified. And X201C, thank you for apologizing, I accept, but I want you to understand something. My accent is part of who I am. It is part of my journey. When you mock it, you mock everything my family has been through, everything we have overcome. I hope you will remember this and treat others better in the future. And X201D. The studio erupted in applause once again, this time even louder and longer. People were on their feet, tears streaming down many faces. Brad nodded, unable to meet Min and X2019's eyes, and then turned and walked off the stage with his family following behind him. Steve had made his decision clear. The Mitchell family was done for the day. ACT4. The turnaround. As the Mitchell family exited the stage, Steve Harvey turned to the audience and the cameras. His expression had softened, but the intensity of his conviction remained. And X201C, ladies and gentlemen, I want you to understand something. What just happened here was not about being politically correct. It was not about being overly sensitive. It was about basic human decency and respect for people who have worked harder than most of us can imagine to be part of this country we all share. And X201D. He walked over to the Nguyen family, who were still standing at their podium, looking somewhat overwhelmed by what had just transpired. Steve placed a hand on Min and X2019's shoulder. And X201C, Mr. Nguyen, I want to apologize on behalf of this show, and on behalf of anyone who has ever made you feel like your accent or your background was something to be ashamed of. You and your family represent everything that is beautiful about this country. Your story, your success, your dignity in the face of disrespect, that is what America should be about. And X201D. Min and X2019's eyes glistened with unshed tears. And X201C, thank you, Mr. Harvey. You did not have to do what you did, but it means more than you know. not just for my family, but for everyone who has ever felt like they did not belong because they speak differently or look differently. And X201D, Steve nodded, clearly moved. And X201C, well, here is what we are going to do. The Mitchell family has forfeited, which means we need another family to compete against you. But before we do that, I want to hear your story. I want everyone watching to know who the Nguyen family really is. And X201D. And so, in a departure from the usual format of Family Feud, Steve Harvey spent the next several minutes interviewing the Nguyen family. Min shared the story of leaving Vietnam, of the fear and hope he and Lan had felt as they boarded a boat to escape to refugee camps, of the years in the camps before finally being sponsored to come to America. He talked about learning English by watching television and practicing with customers at the restaurant where he worked before opening his own. Lan spoke about the challenges of raising children in a country where everything was different from what she had known, about the balance between preserving their Vietnamese culture and helping their children become American. The children talked about growing up watching their parents work endless hours, about the pride they felt in their heritage, and about the education their parents had sacrificed everything to provide. The audience listened in rapt silence, many people wiping tears from their eyes. This was not the typical entertainment of a game show. This was something deeper, something that touched the heart of what it means to be human, to struggle, to persevere, and to build a life worth living against all odds. When the interview concluded, Steve made an announcement that surprised everyone. And X201C, the Nguyen family came here today to compete and to have a chance at winning some money for their family. What happened with Brad Mitchell should not take that away from them. So here is what we are going to do. We are going to bring in another family to compete against them, but regardless of whether they win or lose, the Nguyen family is going home with $20,000 from the Family Feud family as a token of our respect and appreciation for everything they represent. And X201D. The studio exploded in applause and cheers. The Nguyen family members embraced each other, overwhelmed by the generosity and the affirmation. Min shook Steve and X2019's hand, his voice thick with emotion. And X201C, this is too much. You do not have to do this. And X201D. And X201C, yes, we do. And X201D, Steve said firmly. And X201C, and I want to do more. I want to visit your restaurant. I want to support your business. And I want everyone watching this show to know where you are and to support you too, because that is how we build the kind of community we all want to live in. And X201D. The episode continued with a new family brought in to compete against the Nguyens, who went on to play with renewed energy and joy. They ended up winning the game as well, earning additional money on top of Steve and X2019's gift. More importantly, they won something that could not be measured in dollars. They won the respect and admiration of millions of people who would watch this episode and be moved by their grace, their dignity, and their story. ACT5. The legacy. When the episode aired 3 weeks later, the response was immediate and overwhelming. The clip of Steve Harvey confronting Brad Mitchell and defending the Nguyen family went viral within hours, racking up tens of millions of views across social media platforms. People from every corner of the country and from around the world weighed in, and the overwhelming majority praised Steve for taking a stand against casual racism and for celebrating the immigrant family and X2019's story. The Nguyen family and X2019's restaurant in Orange County saw an immediate surge in business. People traveled from all over Southern California to eat there, to meet the family, and to show their support. The restaurant had to extend its hours and hire additional staff to handle the demand. Local news outlets covered the story, and soon national media picked it up as well. The family was invited to appear on talk shows, to speak at community events, and to share their story with audiences who were hungry for examples of resilience and the American dream. But the most profound impact was on the broader conversation about respect, immigration, and the treatment of people who speak with accents. Educators began using the clip in classrooms to teach students about empathy and cultural sensitivity. Advocacy groups for immigrants and refugees shared it as an example of allyship and standing up for what is right. Linguistics professors wrote articles about the stigmatization of accents and why Steve Harvey and X2019's defense of Min Nguyen mattered so much. Thousands of people who spoke English as a second language reached out on social media, to share their own experiences of being mocked or discriminated against because of their accents. Many said that watching Steve defend the Nguyen family had made them feel seen and valued in a way they had not felt before. Parents of immigrant families showed the clip to their children, using it as a teaching moment about pride in their heritage and the importance of standing up to bigotry. Steve Harvey kept his promise to visit the Nguyen family and ex-2019's restaurant. He arrived with a film crew and several celebrity friends, and the visit was documented for his talk show. During the visit, he tried every dish on the menu, praised the food, and spent time talking with customers about why supporting immigrant-owned businesses mattered. The segment became one of the highest-rated episodes of his talk show that season. As for Brad Mitchell, his experience was very different. The backlash he faced was swift and severe. His employer in Montana placed him on administrative leave and eventually let him go after determining that his behavior on national television reflected poorly on their company values. His social media accounts were flooded with criticism, and he eventually deleted them entirely. For months, he struggled with the public shame and the consequences of a moment of thoughtlessness that had been broadcast to millions. But then something unexpected happened. Brad reached out to the Nguyen family through the Family Feud producers. He wrote them a letter, a long and heartfelt apology in which he took full responsibility for his actions, and explained that the experience had forced him to confront his own prejudices and the casual cruelty he had always dismissed as humor. He did not ask for forgiveness or for them to speak on his behalf. He simply wanted them to know that he was working to become a better person. Min and Lan discussed the letter with their family and decided to respond. They wrote back, expressing appreciation for his apology and encouraging him to use his experience to educate others. They even agreed to meet with him in person, a meeting that was emotional and healing for both sides. Brad told them about the work he was doing with diversity and inclusion groups in his community, about the volunteer work he had started with refugee resettlement organizations, and about the conversations he had begun having with his own children about respect and empathy. The Nguyen family shared this development publicly, explaining that while Brad and ex-2019's initial behavior had been wrong, his genuine efforts to change and make amends deserved to be acknowledged. Their grace in extending forgiveness while maintaining their dignity became another powerful lesson for the millions who had followed the story. A year after the episode aired, Family Feud invited the Nguyen family back for a special anniversary segment. Steve Harvey welcomed them with open arms, and they gave an update on how their lives had changed. The restaurant had expanded to a second location. Their oldest daughter had opened a free medical clinic for underserved immigrant communities. Their son had started a scholarship fund for children of refugees, and their youngest had graduated from law school and was working with an organization that provided legal services to immigrant families. During that appearance, Steve reflected on the impact of that original episode. And X201C, what happened that day was not comfortable. It was not easy, but it was necessary. We cannot let disrespect slide just because it makes us uncomfortable to call it out. We cannot allow people to be diminished because of where they come from or how they speak. And we cannot forget that behind every accent, every difference, there is a human story that deserves to be honored. And X201D, the Nguyen family and X2019's story became part of a larger conversation about what it means to be American, about the contributions of immigrant families, and about the responsibility we all have to stand up for each other. Universities invited Min to speak about his experience and the importance of cultural pride. Organizations working with refugee communities used the family and X2019's story as inspiration for the families they served. Perhaps most importantly, the episode changed the culture at Family Feud itself. The show implemented new training for contestants about respect and cultural sensitivity. They began featuring more diverse families and highlighting their unique stories. And they made it clear that while competition and fun were important, treating every family with dignity was non-negotiable. Years later, when people remembered the moment Steve Harvey kicked a contestant off Family Feud for mocking an immigrant family and X2019's accent, they remembered it as more than just a viral moment or a piece of entertainment. They remembered it as a turning point, a reminder that we all have the power and the responsibility to stand up for what is right, to defend those who are being disrespected, and to celebrate the courage and resilience of people who have overcome incredible odds to build better lives. The Nguyen family continued to thrive, their success built on the same foundation of hard work and determination that had brought them to America in the first place. But now they also carried the gratitude and respect of millions who had been moved by their story and by Steve Harvey and X 2019's willingness to defend them when it mattered most. And whenever Min spoke in public, whether at his restaurant, at a community event, or in an interview, he spoke with the same accent he had always had. But now that accent carried even more meaning. It was not just a marker of his journey. It was a symbol of dignity, of resilience, and of the truth that how we speak is far less important than what we stand for and how we treat each other. If this story inspired you and reminded you of the importance of standing up for what is right and treating everyone with respect, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. We bring you more powerful stories like this one that celebrate kindness, courage, and human dignity. Thank you for watching, and remember that we all have the power to make a difference by choosing respect over cruelty every single day.